Hi everybody, please subscribe to this channel and like the video to support my project. And we are starting a new adventure. We are going to visit a well-preserved ancient Roman city. It's located around 26 kilometers from Rome. We can reach there by metro. We arrived at the station Ostia Antica and appear in the Italian town Ostia. Few steps from the station is located archaeological park Ostia Antica. We are going to visit it today. Many years ago, Ostia was located in the very coast and was a large seaport. Since then, the coastline has gone sideways due to silting, but the city is still adjacent to the Tiber river. By the way, the word Ostia means the mouth of the river. According to one version, Ostia was the first Roman colony. First king Marcius destroyed the Etruscan settlement here and then turned a small harbor on the Tiber into an important transport hub. According to this legend, the city was founded in the 7th century BC. However, archaeologists and historians have not found clear evidence to this version. Here is the rest of funeral monuments. Starting from the 2nd century BC, tombs began to be built in the south side of the Via Ostiensis, outside of the city. According to the second version, Ostia was founded in the 4th-3rd century BC, along with other colonies. Most of the archaeologists find data from this period. At first, there was a military camp for defense of the western borders, which gradually transformed into a port due to its convenient location. At that time, the city was a mini copy of Rome and supplied the capital with gods, animals, and slaves. The city was surrounded by walls. There were 3 gates, flanked by square towers. The entrance to the city from Via Ostiensis was thought the gate so-called Porta Romana. Here was a commercial complex. It was built in the end of the 1st century BC. It probably had a connection to the river port in the north side. In the era of the late Roman Empire, Ostia lost its strategic importance. It became a popular place for country villas of the Roman aristocracy and with the time gradually began to fall into disrepair. The city was finally ruined by constant attack by pirates and the movement of the main sea trade routes to neighboring cities. With a time, Ostia was abandoned completely. By the way, Ostia grew to 50,000 inhabitants in the 2nd century, reaching a peak of some 100,000 inhabitants in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. The main city streets were Decumanus and Cardo. They crossed each other at the Forum. It's well known that ancient Rome had a well-developed sewage system. Until the 1st century AD, Ostia's water supply was guaranteed by rainwater. It was collected in cisterns drawing on the groundwater. The city aqueduct was built under Tiberius or under Caligula. It's approximately in the period from 14 to 41 AD. Aqueduct ended at the reservoir adjacent to the walls such of the Porta Romana. From here, water was distributed all over the city by an extensive network of cisterns and lead pipes. The water network supplied all buildings, private and public. Here were the thermal baths, Terma di Nettuno. They date to the late 1st century AD and were rebuilt by the Emperor Hadrian and completed in 139 by the Emperor Antoninus Pius. Inside the complex, visitors passed through 2 rooms decorated with mosaics to reach the frigidarium called baths. After, they could move to heated rooms, to Tepidaria and Caldarium. In the western part of the complex was gymnasium surrounded by a marble colonnade, where took place sport activities. The upper floors were occupied by residential apartments with independent entrance. The main feature of the Roman baths was the combination of bathing and physical activity. These in ancient times were considered as the key to the good health. Thermal procedures were based on the alternation of hot and cold by exposing the body to change its temperature. Blood circulation was stimulated, which contributed to the renewal of the body. This therapy worked especially well after perfusing sweating, which is why physical activity was closely associated with hydrotherapy. The best start of the thermal practice, based on the recommendation of the doctors of that time, was a gym for exercise and sweating. After that, it was possible to start hydrotherapy. Quite large areas were allocated for sport activities, which allowed visitors to engage in various disciplines. One of the most difficult was the struggle. Competitors rubbed themselves with oils, which caused lots of inconvenience to the enemy in the fight. Also, they used ball games. From a physical point of view, ball games were simpler, of which there were several types. Some involved in the use of balls filled with sand, other balls with fluff. In addition, in the gym, the Romans held competitions in fisticuffs, lifting loads, etc. Women loved to play games based on running. Here was the insula or apartment building. It occupied the central part of a block of the Hadrianic period and was used for both residential and commercial purposes. It was a 3 or 4-story building. The house was reached from the street through a covered passage. This part of the city played a significant role in the 1st century BC. Here was built the sanctuary of the Quattro Tempieti. In the area adjacent to it was built a vast complex that comprised the theatre renovated and enlarged during the imperial period, and a square behind it opened towards the Tiber. We are in the theatre. It was built in the last years of the 1st century BC, and it was enlarged in the late 2nd century AD to hold 4,000 spectators. In the late imperial period, a marble parapet was built to isolate the stepped theatin from the orchestra during the aquatic spectacles. The theatre used even today for different spectacles. All Roman theatres had the same principle. The building of the theatre in ancient Rome always had a semicircular shape and consisted of 3 main parts: an orchestra for seats of prestigious guest senators, a stage for performances, and a cave, steps for spectators. A cave was divided into 3 sectors in height. The lower places are closer to the orchestra for the upper stratum of the society. In the middle, the soldiers and the people from the middle class. At the top, the most uncomfortable places were for women and slaves. And this complex consisted of 4 buildings. These are the templates of Venus, Fortuna, Ceres, and Hope. These deities protected commerce and laid near river port. They were built by Publius Lucilius Gamala, a magistrate belonging to an important Ostian family. And here was a cult place dedicated to the eastern god Mithras. It was built around the 3rd century AD inside an earlier complex with shops. One of the back rooms of the shop was transformed into a cult place where the podia and small altar were made from reused building materials. Snakes played an important role in Mithras religion, so we see paintings of snakes on the walls. This is part of the city is the oldest one. It dates to the 4th century BC. In the beginning it was fortified, was surrounded by tufa blocks and had 4 gates. Then it lost its defensive function. Here were templates and public buildings. And in this area lied Forum Square. It was located where the streets Cardo and the Cumanos crossed. It played central role in the civic and religious life of the city. And here is a Capitolium, the city's main temple dedicated to the Capitolina triad, Jupiter, Juno and Minerva. It was built on the north side of the Forum during the Hadrianic period, in around 120 AD. The circular monument stands in the center of the Forum Square. Is traditionally interpreted as the shrine of the Larus Augusti, the gods who protected the emperor. The Forum had its own thermal baths. They were built around 160 AD by Marcus Gavius Maximus, the praetorian prefect of Antoninus Pius. These baths were largest in the city. People entered the apodyteria, changing room. Then they entered frigidarium, called baths. The heated rooms faced such to best exploit their exposure to sunlight. The first room was probably a heliocaminus, room for sun baths. It was followed by Laconicum, a room for steam baths, and warm and hot rooms. The building was decorated in marble. This building, constructed in brick, date between the late 1st and early 2nd century AD. Originally, it was faced with marble. This building had 6 columns. There are 2 interpretations for this building. On the first version, it was the meeting place of the city council, and on the second one, it was connected to the college of the civil Augustales, responsible for the cult of the imperial house. And here also was a temple. It was built in the first half of the 3rd century AD. And here was the market area. Here were bought and sold goods arriving from all over the Mediterranean. This is an apartment building of Hadrianic period. It had a courtyard and at least 2 upper floors that could be reached from stairs located in the courtyard itself. And one more thermal baths, 7 sizes baths. This building of Hadrianic period, it takes its name from a painting of the 7 sages decorating a room that originally was used as a tavern and later incorporated into the baths changing room. From the placement of the entrance is known that the baths were used not only by the residents of this building, but also by people from surrounding district. One more apartment building. It was connected by the corridor to the 7 Sages thermal baths. Meat market or macellum, decoration with a mosaic that is depicted with a dolphin eating a squid, with the inscription "In bide te calcio, envious creature, I trump you." It was thought that dolphins disrupt fishing. . 。  . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 .
。
This building was traditionally interpreted as a Christian cult place because of the inscription with the Christ name, but probably it was domus built around 4th century AD, and perhaps this domus belonged to the family of the Tigrignani. Temple Fabri Navali. This temple was built in the time of Emperor Commodus in the late 2nd century AD. This building probably belonged to the corporation of the Fabri Navalis, shipbuilders. It dates to the mid-2nd or 3rd century AD. We can see several niches here, in one of which stood the statue of the Emperor Trajan. Inside the building was arranged around a large courtyard with a brick colonnade and the central basin. At the back of the courtyard placed a banqueting hall and other public rooms. Rooms were decorated with mosaic floors and wall paintings in imitation of marble veneer. The building was built above earlier domuses. The oldest one, Domus dei Bicrani, dates to the 1st century BC. Here was the residential area for the middle and upper class. This district not far from the city center and near the ancient beach. At the start of the 2nd century AD, during the Traianic and above all the Hadrianic period, the western part of the city took mostly residential function. Here were large multi-story residential complexes with apartments and shops. Some of buildings were directly connected to thermal baths. By the way, in the ancient Rome, apartments on the lower floors were more expensive than on the upper ones. This was due to the fact that in the case of possible fire, the inhabitants of the lower floors were more likely to escape. This marble fontaine stood along the Decumanus in front of the long portico. It was built in the Hadrianic period, around 117-138 AD. This fontaine was used to decorate the street. The Sea Gate. It opened in the direction of the ancient beach and was flanked by 2 square towers. In the imperial period, when the gate wasn't in use, one of the 2 towers was occupied by the Caupona di Alexandri Helix. Firstly, the building took the form of a simple shop. In the 3rd century AD, the shop was turned into a Caupona, inn. This funerary monument was built in around 20th century BC along Cemetery Road in the area outside of the Porta Marina. Many years ago, here was a coast, and here the city ended. We turn back, and on the way back we will look at interesting places that we missed on the way here. And here was a two-story warehouse. Thanks to the inscriptions that we still can see today above the entrance, we can know the names of the owners of it, Epagus and Epagoditus, probably two freedmen of Greek origin. This building was constructed in brick in around of mid-2nd century AD. This barge complex was private and built in around 110 AD. It had a long entrance hall with benches decorated with paintings with plant motifs. The heated rooms were in the western part. The mosaic floor of one of the hot rooms depicts a nude male figure, accompanied by an inscription with the name Epictus Beticosus, who can be identified as the owner of the badges. And this complex was built in around 120 AD and was probably used for the sale of luxury goods. And we are coming back to the forum. This complex had a commercial function. It was built in the Hadrianic period. Here were shops opening onto the street with a vast space behind them. Then, in the early 3rd century AD, it was transformed into a storage area for large containers for liquids, oil, wine, that were in part set onto the ground, dolia de fossa. Some dolias still have numbers on them. Inside the dolia were found around 400 terracotta molds with mythological erotic and circus scenes. Perhaps they were used for cakes. The latrine, or ancient Roman public toilet. It was built inside two shops of the Hadrianic period. It preserves a row of 20 marble seats with holes at the center running around three sides. Under was a channel along which the water drained away. There is also interest in how ancient Romans cleaned themselves after the toilet. They used a tersorium. It was a clear sponge fixed on the end of a wooden stick. The tersorium was usually individual. To clean the sponge, Romans washed it in a bucket with water or salt or vinegar. We are finishing our trip for today. Of course, it's not all places this is possible to see in Ostia Antica. My walk around this city took 6 hours. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to see everything. In one day, it's almost impossible. This is a unique place and I recommend you to go there. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel and see you in the new interesting places.